Hey everybody, Grumbles here with another Wasander video, taking a look at the EC mode once again. So, last weekend we had another EC mode test, or at least I think it was a test. I'm not entirely sure about that. There is little information in the announcements thread on whether it was just another test or some sort of release that was just a weekend long because of the feedback. But for now I just work under the assumption that it was another test. Either way, the latest iteration of the EC mode created quite a bit of controversy, which I think I will talk about a little. However, since there weren't all that many changes to the EC mode itself, and a lot of the feedback about it has been said by me and many others 10 or 20 times over by now, I will keep it short this time around in comparison to my previous feedback videos about the EC mode. Well, let's go over the EC mode and what the problem with this latest iteration was. Now, let me begin with saying I like the EC mode. I always have, and I think it would be a great addition to the game and could very well be my main game mode in the future when it matures. Especially when playing with friends, I really like enduring confrontation, because one of the things that bothers me when flying the normal queue with friends is when one of you gets shot down early or has a mishap, I feel guilty for surviving while my buddy has to wait around for half an hour after he had a mishap at the start, or the other way around. Things like that happen. Sure, I know that's not an issue for everyone, but for me it is, and it is one of the reasons why I prefer to fly alone in the normal queue. So, I like EC. However, the latest one we had some issues. Two massive main ones I want to talk about specifically in this video. Now, as I mentioned, there was not a whole lot of changes to the EC mode itself in comparison to earlier iterations. A few new maps, but other than that, the only real noticeable difference for me was that we seem to have longer timers again on planes, which I consider a good thing for EC mode. Stronger planes should have longer timers in my opinion, so that not everybody can immediately take the top plane in the matchup, and that staying alive in it once you get it matters some more, and that taking one down is an achievement that matters. Now, the counter-argument is of course that some say, yeah, but if I want to fly a particular plane, I don't want to wait for a timer to run down every time. To which I would normally say, well, if you just want to fly one particular plane without having to worry about a timer, you can just do so in the normal simulator battle queue. Yeah, that brings us however to the first big problem we had. While EC mode was on, the normal queue was simply removed. Now, that is something that Gaijin has threatened to do before, well hidden in some QA thread, but still. It was mentioned that they plan on replacing the normal SP queue with EC mode entirely in the future. Now, pretty much everybody who heard about that commented on it, saying that it was a very bad idea and that you don't want to do that. I did so in both videos as well as forum, as did hundreds of other people. And of course, faced with this amount of feedback, Gaijin did what they always do, completely ignored all of it and removed the normal queue anyway. With predictable results. People were not happy about that one. And understandably so. As I have said, I think long timers are good for the EC mode. But that is assuming that someone who just wants to fly one particular plane without having to wait for a timer can do so in the normal queue like they always could. And that's not the only issue. You can't expect everybody to like EC mode better than the normal queue. I do, but it has to be clear that with the EC mode being such a big departure from how the normal game mode is played in simulator battles, you can't expect everybody to like EC mode better than the traditional queue. And a not too small part of the community prefers the normal mode, and you can't just take it away from them and expect them to be happy about it. If Gaijin keeps insisting on doing that in the future, and I hope they do not, I fear the simulator battle community will take a massive hit, with many people that like the normal queue simply leaving the rest with a lot fewer people to play with. And the fact that they like the normal queue better than the EC mode doesn't mean they will never play EC, just like the fact that I would like EC better than the normal queue won't mean I would never play the normal queue. But if you just force one group out of the game completely with such a decision, everybody loses. And it's not like we have too many players in simulator battle as it is. As a matter of fact, another problem with the latest round of EC was that I don't think we currently have enough players to keep the games populated when all nations are unlocked. Many of the games I was in were very empty, often only 2 or 3 players per side and a few bots. On larger maps that does not make for very entertaining games. Now, one thing I noticed is that we often have multiple games of the same BR range and nations going on that are all empty, at the same time. For example, I entered one easy mode game. It's pretty much empty except one other guy and a few bots. After a while of not finding anything, I quit out of the game and queue up again, hoping maybe to get a different matchup with more people. So I get into another game again. Same battle rating range, I did not change the planes, same matchup as before, same map, but a different game and also empty. And other people I asked had similar situations happen. At first I thought that might be a bug. Why are there multiple games of the same battle rating and matchup which are empty instead of having just one game with all the players in it? And maybe it is a bug, but of course thinking about it for a second I realized that there's actually an issue with the EC mechanic that need to be addressed, which is most likely responsible for this. Let's assume, for example, it is late prime time. Player numbers are at their peak. So lots of people queue up for an EC game. One gets created, it fills up with players till it is full, and then a new one gets created and that one starts to fill up too, and so on. The thing is, however, it's prime time. Player numbers are as high as they're going to get. From here, they only go down. However, EC mode games take several hours. Of course, that's one of the main ideas behind them. The thing now is, it gets late, say midnight, more and more people start to quit out of the games and go to bed, and fewer new ones join, so you end up with several games at the same battle rating with the same matchup, all having fewer and fewer players, but which all still go for 1.5 hours or 2 hours. And I assume the matchmaker tries to keep all of them populated as good as he can, so one player gets into an almost empty game here, the next one into another identical almost empty game there. That, I think, is something that needs to be addressed. The matchmaker needs some tool to reduce the number of games again somewhat quickly if the amount of available players drop, as they always will after prime time. I guess one simple solution would be if the matchmaker could adjust the point amount needed to win a match on the fly when there are too many games to keep them all populated, so that the game goes, say, from 150,000 points to 100,000 points or even lower to win a match as required, reducing the time the game stays up and reducing the number of games that need to be populated quicker. Even with this though, I don't think we currently have the players in simulator battles to sustain all battle ratings and nations active at the same time. My suggestion for the future would be to have the normal simulator queue up as it is now, with changing matchups, and EC mode also with rotating nations but offset from the normal queue. So you have, for example, Germany versus USSR in the normal queue and Japan versus US/Great Britain in EC, and the next day or several days it switches. Long term, it would of course be nice to get more players into simulator battles to open up all the nations at the same time. And you know what, I just happen to know a way to do exactly that, to increase the amount of players in simulator battles quickly in a short amount of time, by getting lots and lots of players back that have quit the game in the past. You might have heard about that solution before. It is called "Get rid of the battle rating system, it is killing your game." Yep, that again. You know, earlier tonight someone asked me, "Gee Grilmus, what do you want to do tonight?" And I answered, the same thing I do every night, buddy. I try to get Gaijin to realize that battle rating system is stupid. Well, here we go, let's talk about the battle rating system. I'm sure it will go much better this time than the last 500 times I tried. Now, as I have said, I do like the EC mode and I think it has lots of potential. Because of this, I'm following the development of set mode right from the start, since the first test on the test server. So I can tell you right from the start, one of the primary pieces of feedback about the mode was, yeah, it's great and all, but get rid of the battle ratings, they don't work. We also had a historic EC mode test, which, as mentioned in the past, got overwhelmingly positive feedback, with the majority saying, yes, this is the way forward for Simulator Battle EC mode. And the primary concern being, once again, that the battle rating is still responsible for the timers. Now, the battle ratings are of course not just a problem in EC mode, but in Simulator Battle as a whole. Demands to remove it are years old, but sadly the battle ratings have gotten only worse instead, and are right now as a result worse than they have ever been before. And while the battle ratings are bad for the game in general, as it turns out, the EC mode actually amplifies the negative effect of bad battle ratings substantially. Let me give you an example. Oh, and before you start telling me that this battle rating of that nation is even worse, when I do give you that example, yes, I know, it is just one example of many and you can probably come up with an even worse one. But this is not a competition about who can come up with the most broken battle rating, though I'm not sure Gaijin realizes that too. No, I just want to show why the effect is even worse in Enduring Confrontation mode than in the normal queue. So, in one match I played, for example, I played as the Japanese in the 3.3 to 4.7 battle rating range, my favorite one, against UK and US planes. So, battle ratings 3.3 to 4.7. I got a few crews, so I pick a A6M20, of course, it's exactly battle rating 3.3, so I can take it right away. Then for a little bit later another 0 or 2, an M3 and an M5 and the Ki-61 Hien, the one with 20mm cannons at battle rating 4 when I need something a little bit faster. I get into the battle in my little 0, and one plane I meet often right away is the B-47 T-25 Thunderbolt, a later model T Thunderbolt that entered service in 1944 while I fly my A6M2 which entered service in 1940. Now, quite a few of those Thunderbolts like to turn fight 100 meters above the ground, so they are no problem at first. But along come a few players that actually use them properly. Climbing to altitude first, after all it is an easy match, and they take long, not that you run the risk the game is over by the time you're on altitude, so you can take your time. And then said players start to do diving attacks from high up at high speed, shoot at something and then just fly away with the speed they build up while diving from high altitude. A B-47 that is doing that with some discipline to keep his speed high, you won't catch in your 0 unless you're very, very lucky. Sure, you can climb above it and dive down, but even if you do dive down from a kilometer above Thunderbolt that keeps its speed up, what will happen is that the angle gets flatter and flatter as you come down and the B-47 is moving away, and you still level out quite a bit behind him, immediately drop below his speed again and he's away. So what you actually have to do is not just get above, but also in front of it, so you can intercept him while diving on him. And that way you have a reasonable chance to do enough damage before he dives away. Getting above and in front of a plane that flies 100 plus kph faster than you in a straight line can take a bit of doing. But what would one expect? A decently flown Thunderbolt T-25 from 1944 is far superior to the late Zeros it would have faced in reality, but in War Thunder it can't even meet those as its battle rating is too low. It most certainly is superior to one from 1940. So here's the thing, I don't mind facing better and newer planes in easy mode. That's the point of it. You start with an earlier, older plane and with time you can take newer and better ones. I don't have a problem with this. I also have no problem with the high BR spread, because the idea would be, okay, I join in my older plane and now if I meet someone in a newer, better plane, well, that guy had to wait a while to get into it, and if I do manage to shoot him down, he can't come back in it anytime soon. I took that superior plane out of the fight. Great success, feels like I achieved something. That's why I said at the beginning that I like long timers in enduring confrontation, so that shooting down a better plane means something, and also that if you fly one you have a reason why you don't want to die. That is one of the critiques of easy mode after all. What is your incentive to stay alive if you can respawn? Well, one would be that you want to keep your better plane alive, because if you lose it, it is back on a 30 or 40 minute timer. So that would be why I don't mind meeting better planes in easy mode, because it is an achievement if I shoot them down. They can't come back in this better plane in a while, and after a bit you have a better one yourself which you want to keep alive so you're not back to a weaker plane. Or so it should work. Enter the battle rating system and everything starts to go horribly wrong. Back to my example. After not being able to catch a bunch of B-47s flying patiently and disciplined and attacking from high altitude in my 0, I take my Ki-61 out, which I have in my lineup, to have a better chance of catching them. It still takes some doing, because especially on higher altitude the Thunderbolt is still faster. After all, the Ki-61 has basically the same engine in the PF-109E but a heavier airframe, so while faster than a 0 and a better diver, still not the world beater when it comes to speed. But it does work better than 0 and I eventually get 1 or 2. So what do they do? Well, they respawn of course, right away and in the same plane, the B-47. Because the Thunderbolt has the lowest battle rating possible in this matchup. When, however, shortly after I lose my Hien, which is still weaker than the Thunderbolt assuming it is flown right, my Hien with its 4.0 battle rating is back on a 30-minute timer, and I'm back to flying zeros. I hope you see where the problem is and why easy mode magnifies already existing battle rating problems. That whole, yeah, I took out a stronger plane and now it's on a timer and won't come back right away, kinda doesn't work if that stronger plane doesn't have a timer and my weaker one does have one. But okay, some of you might say now, Grimmels, you are doing it wrong. You said you play battle rating range from 3.3 to 4.7 and catching thunderbolts in zeros is giving you trouble. Well, just take the Raiden then. And yes, the J2M2 Raiden, also at battle rating 3.3, same as the M20 and the T25 Thunderbolt, and a good contender for the most broken battle ratings of them all. Yeah, while I have trouble catching a well-flown Thunderbolt in my Zero, or even Yen, even in dives, I most certainly would not have that problem in the Raiden. If I start hunting Thunderbolts in that thing, they are going to start to have a bad day. Which of course makes the whole point behind the EC mode system completely and utterly moot. Since the idea would be that you start with a weaker plane and then move up to stronger ones as time goes on, but you are back to weaker ones when you lose those stronger ones. Well, let's take a look at the Japanese tree. Turns out, not counting premiums, there is no better plane than the Raiden in the entire battle rating range from 3.3 to 4.7, just zeros and yens, both inferior to the Raiden by a significant margin in any version. So, if I play EC mode with the Japanese in this battle rating range, why would I bring anything else but the Raiden? Every other fighter you could bring is weaker than the Raiden and most likely has a timer on top of that, while you can take the Raiden thanks to its minimal battle rating right away and respawn as often as you want with it right away, just like with the Thunderbolt, completely destroying the entire EC game mechanic. And this is why the battle rating system is even worse in EC mode than it is already in the normal queue, and why the EC mode will never be what it can be till this is finally fixed. In the normal mode, you can also meet a P47 T25 Thunderbolt in your M20 as they are at the same battle rating, and you can also meet a J2M2 Raiden in your P38E or your Spitfire Mark IIA as they are all on the same battle rating, and it's a huge issue there as well. But in a normal queue, when you shoot them down, they stay down. In EC mode, they respawn right away, greatly increasing the effect of broken battle ratings, especially when the planes in question are flown correctly, which happens more and more these days as you can actually see planes below you now. Well, that is some more feedback on the recent EC mode. I have to say, I do get tired of making these kind of videos, but with what was going on in the EC mode over the weekend, I felt I have to address it, especially since I am quite invested in this new game mode. Well, and this is it for this video. I hope it was enjoyable anyway, thanks for watching and maybe I'll see you next time.